Have you ever lost your keys? I mean, being menopausal is a regular occurrence for me. I don't know about anybody else, but finding my keys, I remember there was a time when I ran around my house frantically looking for my keys, and my son was like, "Mom, Mom." I was like, "Son, leave me alone. I'm looking for my keys." And he was like, "Mom, your keys are in your hand." Sure enough, there they were in my hand. I was so discombobulated. I felt like an idiot. And even more so, my son was looking at me like I had lost my mind. But when you think about incidences like that, where you're lost and you don't have a recollection of, reality and your present reality, these are things that happen to all of us, not just women going through menopause, but it happens to us at different stages in our lives and throughout different stages in our lives. One of the things I want to talk to you about today is finding yourself. It's like your keys. When you lose your keys, what do you do? Do you do like me and just stand up and spin around in a room and say, I can't find my keys? Or do you try to retrace your step, which is the more logical thing to do, to retrace your step in order to find where you last had your keys or where you last possibly may have placed your keys? That's logical. Listen, at my age, in my condition, logic does not always apply. But the truth of the matter is that most people logically go back to a place to retrace their steps in order to find their keys. Losing yourself is the same thing. I mean, you're gonna be like, how is that the same thing? It is the same thing. Spiritually and from a spiritual perspective, one of the things that I have come to understand in working with individuals or people in general is that most of us have lost ourselves at some point. We may not always be able to identify the point. For some of us, we may be able to. But for the majority of us that have lost ourselves to the point where we didn't try to recapture the moment or to go back to see when the actual occurrence happened, those are the people I'm talking about. The people who don't know exactly when they lost themselves. Losing yourself is real. Losing yourself is something that can set the precedent for the rest of your life here in this realm. So it's important that you find yourself. How do you find yourself? You go back to the place where you thought you may have misplaced yourself. It's a psychological trip that you have to take. It is also a spiritual occurrence because it means that you're going to have to fix what you find there. You're going to have to go back to that place where you had a traumatic event or a traumatic occurrence in your life, whether it's your childhood or some other incident that prompted you to fragment your reality. It's no different from PTSD. People who have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, they suffer some traumatic experience that keeps on invading and intruding on their lives. And the same is true for those of you who've lost yourselves and don't know the process that you need to engage in to find yourselves. The process is very simple. I say simple, but it takes a lot of work. It really does. One of the things I recognized back in 2008 when I started this process is that the people who would come to me, most people who came to me, I did something called a timeline regressive chart. And the timeline regressive chart is something that allows me to go back and chronologically see occurrences or patterns of behavior that would occur at certain times in that person's life. Some people have cycles. Cycling means that every 2 years they have a traumatic event or some big event in their life that occurs. And that's a pattern. Every 2 years, you can see those people repeating that pattern. Some people cycle every 5 years. But the thing that was most important is when I recognized that pattern, that spiritual pattern, is that when they did not do the 5 years consecutively and they hit a 6 year or 7 year, that 6 year or 7 year indicated that there was something different that occurred that changed the whole outcome of the pattern. And I'm not saying anything that's different or anything that is new. Most of what I've seen has already been said. And that's the thing, like King Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. But what I'm here to tell you today is how you can find yourself. How I found myself, I had to go back to my childhood. I had to go all the way back, but I already knew I lost myself in my childhood. So it made it easy for me to go back to my childhood and to peel back the layers of the onion and look at the different incidences or experiences that I encountered that made me who I am. You know, a lot of us check out, a lot of us determine at some point. It's amazing what the words you say to yourself, the impact that those words can have on yourself. Yeah, your words are powerful. If you tell yourself you were not going to do something when you were a child, chances are you're still adhering to that thing you told yourself at that point in time. Isn't that amazing? The mind is a brilliant thing, isn't it? It is not only complicated, but it adheres to the whole notion that we tell it what to do. Consciously or unconsciously, we're telling ourselves what we do and how we should approach things. So, how should you approach the whole notion of finding yourself? If you didn't lose yourself in your childhood, did you lose yourself in a former relationship, a prior relationship? Whether it was a relationship with your parents, whether it was a relationship with your significant other, whether it was a relationship with your children or one of your children. These incidences happen and they can catapult you into a state, not of shock, but a state where you separate yourself from your spirit. You and your spirit have actually separated from each other because the spirit is something that needs to be wholesome. It's something that needs to be pure. It's something that needs to be protected. And in order to protect yourself, you went into the flesh. You went into your humanity. You know, I used to watch Vampire Diaries, and they would say, you know what? They had the ability to turn on their humanity or turn it off. You actually turned off your humanity. You actually turned off a part of you that allows you to allow your spirit to soothe, to heal, and to help you get through the event. So you went into your total humanity in this incident, it's not like the vampires, and you decided, you know what? I'm going to turn off this switch. I'm going to either pretend this thing didn't happen, or I'm going to ignore the fact that it happened. And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use the incident as motivation to motivate me through the rest of my life. And here you are. You have this motivation to succeed. You have this motivation to be the best you can be. But at the back of your mind, there's something gnawing at you. There's something telling you, you know what? Something is missing. Something is not right. And you don't know what is right. And the thing that is wrong with you is the fact that you left a piece of you somewhere else. You fragmented. You broke yourself into two things. Sometimes people break themselves into many different parts. But for you, you don't know how to put the pieces back together, or you may not even be aware. If you're hearing this conversation and listening to me on YouTube, you may be very much unaware that you have broken yourself, that yourself is broken. Even if it's some other incident or some other occurrence or some experience, you're broken. And brokenness will bring you to a place where you're lost. Nobody wants to admit they're broken. Nobody wants to admit they're broken to the point where they've lost themselves, right? But here you are broken, fragmented, and here you are trying to heal, and here you are not knowing how to heal. So how do you heal? How do you pick up those pieces? First, you have to find the pieces. You have to put the pieces back together like a puzzle. You know, that's my work. That's what I do on a daily basis. I put the pieces back together. I construct and I look at the missing piece and I find that piece and I complete the puzzle. That's what you have to do. You're like, you're not telling me anything. All you're telling me is find pieces to a puzzle. Yeah, but what I'm really telling you is truth. The truth is that you have to look at yourself. You have to examine yourself. You have to deal with yourself. You have to own the mistakes. You have to own the parts of you that you've sifted through and decided that they didn't belong anymore. You have to take out those pieces again, and you have to let those pieces become a part of the general rule. You have to let those pieces become a part of the solution. Yeah, losing yourself is not easy, but you have to find yourself at the place where you lost yourself. Does that make sense? Go back to the very beginning. For many people, they can't do this on their own, so they seek a therapist or a psychologist or a counselor or a life coach. For others of you, it's simple as taking a trip back down memory lane, writing down on paper. I'm a big proponent of writing and journaling. Journal your experiences. Journal the experiences that brought you to this place where you didn't realize that you were here, that you are separated from yourself, technically. It's a matter of reacquainting your spirit with your humanity. It's a matter of becoming balanced. It's a matter of becoming whole. It's a matter of joining what was once a whole part and rekindling that relationship with yourself. To find yourself, you have to go back to the place where you first lost yourself. If you are having the difficulty trying to establish where you lost yourself, you can reach out. Reach out. Ask a question. Ask your parents if they're alive. If you can't ask your parents, write all that stuff down. Nobody has to see your journal. Nobody has to know the process that you're embarked on. But I guarantee you that most people will be aware when the process is completed that you did go through this process. My name is Ingrid Felton. As always, thank you for joining in. If you enjoy what you heard here today, please share it with someone else. Tell others about what I'm doing here. Tell them about, the value you got from this today. And please subscribe to the videos, like the videos, and visit me at ingridfelton.com. Thank you. Bye-bye.